Okay, welcome everybody. Yes, I know. It's the magic pumpkin patch. That's what Megan and I have been telling each other. There's pumpkins everywhere here. Every house has pumpkins. So for those of you who just joined, I'm in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia, and I think it's pumpkin central. And they have all kind of squashes. Like I'm just every day eating different kinds of yummy squashes. So I am going to now share my screen, and hopefully you're here to hear about hormesis and quantum biology and some of the new strategies that are suggested by these two emerging areas of science to help with health. Um, Hopefully you're curious about what I'm going to say. And obviously, if you're here, you have an interest in learning more about how to help yourself. And the beauty of these strategies are that they're mostly free and quite easy to implement. At the very least, I'm hoping you're going to go away from today's presentation with more hope that there are things you can do, even if you're not in a position to start implementing things right away. And even if you've been ill for decades, and even if you have moderate to severe illness, I'm confident that you may be able to find something to shift a little bit to work on. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So many of you know that I'm traveling this year. I just entered my 6th month of travel. And this travel, this is my van and my Starlink, my trusty companions. This travel has been made possible because I try everything that I teach, and a lot of the things that I try have turned out to be helpful. Over the years, for those of you who don't know me, I became ill in 1989 at the age of 24, and I've spent my entire adult life trying to understand my health conditions, which include ME and FM and environmental sensitivities, autonomic dysfunction, mast cell activation, and probably some others I don't even know about yet. And throughout that time, I feel incredibly grateful that I've remained open-minded enough that even when I've been skeptical, and I'm skeptical about almost everything, but if the science starts adding up, I tend to give it a try. I've tried lots of things, and in combination, those things have helped me improve my health significantly so that this trip became a possibility for me. And the bonus, I didn't anticipate this at all, is that when I retired from medical practice at the end of 2022, it freed up a lot of time. And as I'm driving around North America, I download podcasts, mostly health podcasts, and I'm listening and I'm constantly learning new ideas. And then when I hear an exciting speaker, I check them out and read their papers and try to discern whether there's a scientific basis or rationale for what they're proposing. And what I've been learning, I would say over the past year, but even more so over the past 5 to 6 months of this current holiday, is blowing my mind. And it's really turning on its head everything I've learned in medicine over the past 40 years. Some of the things I've learned and have even taught, I now believe are probably wrong. Others of them are correct. But what I'm going to share with you today is what I call upstream, meaning it's the movers and drivers, it's the levers of our health that influence some of the things that many of us have been doing to try to improve health. And even though I'm early in the learning process myself, I'm so excited about what I'm learning. I just thought, you know what, I might make a few mistakes. I'm still figuring this out myself, but I really want to share it with the community so that you can make the decision for yourself whether you want to look into any of this material farther. And the tips and strategies I'm sharing with you today are really the tip of the proverbial iceberg. There's so much more, and I'm just going to present hopefully a few tantalizing ideas that will get you interested and help you see that this is a really legitimate area of study. So what I'm proposing is a paradigm shift. In conventional medicine, we treat every single disease as an individual entity. And we even do this to the extent that we have individual specialties to treat every organ system and every disease. And unfortunately, we also research every disease separately, and nobody in these silos tends to talk to each other. And therefore, it takes a really long time to make progress. So this, I've been sick for a long time, 35 years. And one of my biggest frustrations is even though I go to conferences all the time, I'm on a conference today and tomorrow for long COVID. So I'm constantly learning things, but it takes forever for those research findings to get translated into something actionable that I or you could actually do to improve our health. What I'm going to talk about today is a new paradigm that I'm learning about, that I'm very excited about, and it comes from the fields of hormesis and quantum biology. I'm going to share what I'm doing differently in my own life, so how this has impacted me personally, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So this is, so the conventional medical paradigm, as I've mentioned, splits things into specific diseases and body systems. And there is validity to that. Of course, every disease has its own particular features. So for the diseases that I specialize in, what we call now the complex chronic diseases, they all have their individual features. For example, myalgic encephalomyelitis, we know that post-exertional malaise, which is now measurable through the 2-day cardiopulmonary exercise test, is kind of the feature that we look for to decide, does someone have ME or not? We know that in fibromyalgia, brain sensitization, augmenting pain is a central feature. And it's in research settings, this is measurable. In environmental sensitivity, we know that there's some genetic variants that make people more susceptible. In IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, we know that dysbiosis, alterations in the microbiome living in our gut, and gut inflammation are very key. In long COVID, we know that there's problems with smell and taste. There's breathing abnormalities that persist long after the COVID appears to be gone. And there's things like microclots, which although they occur a little bit in some of the other diseases, they seem most prominent in long COVID. So there's absolute validity to saying there's unique features to every disease. To make it even more complicated, we're not all the same, right? So if 2 people get ME or 2 people get long COVID, because of their life experiences, their previous exposures, their genetics, their diet, their activity, etc., they're not all going to look the same. I think in modern medicine, we've tended to get lost in the weeds. We've tended to get lost in these details. And as a result of that, decades of research, although we've learned so much, like I've been to hundreds, if not thousands of conferences, I have binders full of notes at home in my office, but this has not yet led to a single substantive intervention for people like you who are suffering, right? Everything I've tried that's helped me improve has been from outside of conventional medicine. It's been in the self-management umbrella. So what if there were, in addition to being the unique features of every disease, what if there were also commonalities? And what if these commonalities, just gonna get rid of you guys for a minute, and what if these commonalities were upstream of all the disease-specific features? So I'll give you an example of what I mean. What if the commonality of decreased energy production by the mitochondria was upstream and causing most chronic disease features? Now, this is not that far-fetched because some very prominent scientists are proposing just this model. So the research shows pretty conclusively that decreased energy production by the mitochondria is seen in all complex chronic diseases that have been studied and all of the serious life-threatening diseases that afflict society, things like metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cancer, dementia, heart disease, and all mental health conditions. So that evidence is there in the literature. Dr. Robert Navio, who I talk about quite often, has given a very elegant model of how the mitochondria are sensing danger and kind of downgrading their energy production, and how this then leads to a vicious cycle. And another researcher, his name is Doug Wallace, who's probably never met or heard of Dr. Navio, came out with a very, very similar proposal back in 2013. So these proposals have been out there for a good 10 years that decreased energy production might be an upstream cause of virtually all chronic diseases. Then you might ask, well, if there's a single cause, why do people with all these diseases look so different? And that's where I think individual vulnerability, things like environment, diet, exercise, genetics, epigenetics, microbiome, all of these things come into play. You have a common cause, and depending on individual strengths and vulnerabilities, it may manifest as a different type of condition. So if this could be true, that there could be one or a small number of upstream causes leading to most chronic disease, these researchers would say all chronic disease. I'm hedging my bets a bit because there tends to always be exceptions. Then it would follow that there could be strategies which are upstream that address this maybe one or small group of, say, stressors or problems, and that we wouldn't then have to understand fully every single disease in order to fix them. So the good news is that if there's upstream strategies, there may be things we can do that we can shift that will impact multiple body systems at once. And we know this is true. I'm just going to use the example. So for example, if you can increase mitochondrial function, the evidence suggests that it's going to improve most disease states. And hormesis and quantum biology are two umbrella terms to describe strategies which may be in this category that are upstream and can make significant changes in multiple systems. Now, both of these systems, and they fit together really nicely, could be described as ancestral, meaning to use them effectively, the goal is to mimic and recreate as much as possible the lifestyle and environmental exposures that our ancestors experienced. For example, before the advent of agriculture, before the advent of the Industrial Revolution, before people generally lived inside, before we had light bulbs, before we had non-native or man-made electrical fields, before we had processed foods, how did our ancestors live? Why might this be important? Because our bodies evolved to take advantage of our natural environment. Humans have been evolving for, say, at least 1 million years. Some would say in earlier, forms, maybe up to 2 million years. And before us, there were all of our mammal ancestors. So we've been around for like 65 million years, let's say, since the big asteroid hit. And our bodies have evolved to learn ways to adapt to and even take advantage of our natural environment. So it turns out that our bodies actually need our natural environment, exposure to sunlight and seasonal non-processed food as two examples to survive. The beauty of this approach is that ancestral tools are generally free, and they can be used in conjunction with any and all other treatments that you are doing and may need to stay on, like medications, supplements, hands-on therapies. The one kind of caveat is that because the environment around the Earth varies a lot, right? It's very different if you live at the equator versus Edmonton, Alberta, which, you know, is one of the highest latitude capitals in the world. The environments are very different. So some of the ancestral strategies will differ a little bit depending on where you're living, but the broad strokes and general principles are widely applicable. So in this presentation, I'm going to give you some examples from Hormesis and a couple examples from quantum biology, after, of course, explaining what those two things mean. Hormesis is our cells' ability to respond to low levels of stress by increasing their capacity to function. Now, I am guilty of this for sure. I thought that stress was bad and to be avoided. But it turns out that environmental stress from naturally occurring stressors is actually necessary for us to be healthy. Without our ability to adapt to the normal ups and downs of daily life, like more sun, less sun, hotter, colder, more food, less food, more moisture, less moisture, things like that, we wouldn't have survived. So all of our ancestors were here because our ancestors were really good at adapting. They were constantly exposed to changes in all those things I mentioned: activity, food availability, temperature, even things like hydrogen and oxygen concentrations. So the definition of a hormetic stressor is a stressor that can make us stronger and healthier. And these are all things that naturally vary or change in the real environment. The beauty of hormetic stressors is the way that they work, and I'm going to show you this in a subsequent slide, is upstream of most of the biological processes that most of modern medicine focuses on. This is why a single intervention, something like exercise, and I'm not saying we should all go out and exercise, some of us are very limited, but just to use it as an example, exercise affects so many body systems directly. It affects the heart, the brain, and metabolism, three of the big ones. It's because it's hormetic and it acts on, we'll call them umbrella nutrient sensing pathways that then have effects on many other things. And this is a radically new paradigm because conventional medicine generally tries to make a drug or even a supplement that acts on one specific pathway and changes it out of context with everything else that's happening in the body. Now, I really want to emphasize that not all stress is hormetic or beneficial. This is really important message. To be beneficial, stressors need to be intermittent. So for example, say you're too cold, you have to then have a chance to warm up, during which time the metabolism speeds up to create more mitochondria so that the next time you're exposed to cold, you are more resilient to it. That's kind of the essence of how hormesis works. The stressors have to be small and gradual. If you're severely ill, you can't go run a marathon next week. That's not hormetic, right? Boot camp is not hormetic, so I'm against boot camps. The stressors have to be small enough that the body has a chance to respond to them. And then the stressors have to be of the right kind. So man-made stressors are rarely hormetic or beneficial. So please do not try to adapt yourself to air pollution, toxins, junk food, or man-made light. That's not going to benefit you. It has to be naturally occurring environmental stressors to be effective. How it works at the cellular level is that the cells and the mitochondria in particular and the nutrient sensing pathways notice when something's a little bit off. And the beauty is that all of these nutrient sensing pathways are connected. So whether you exercise or have a cold exposure or eat a plate of nutritious fruits and vegetables, similar pathways are activated. This is what makes it upstream and like an umbrella strategy. So things like sirtuins, AMPK, mTOR, insulin signaling, these are words you may have heard about. The initials themselves aren't that important. I'm just mentioning them to say there's a ton of research, right? So I'm not just making this up. There's tens of thousands of papers documenting how different types of stressors activate these pathways that then in general help our body repair and become more resilient. A really important note is that these hormetic stressors work throughout the lifespan. So it doesn't really matter if you're 20 or 70, you still have the capacity to improve your cellular function, including your mitochondrial function. So here's a specific example. Here's some examples. One is time-restricted eating. So when we allow ourselves to get a little bit hungry and we don't have so much glucose in our bloodstream, it activates these nutrient sensing pathways and a whole cascade of events starts, which leads to our brain and our body repairing itself, getting rid of garbage, and growing new cells and new mitochondria that are healthy. Similarly, colorful plants and vegetables exert a similar effect, and I'm going to just hone in on that more on the next slide. And then heat and cold exposure. So these strategies may not be new to you, and you might be thinking, okay, same old, same old. But the reason I included them is because the reason that they work may not be what you think. So to give you an example, we all know that we're recommended to eat lots of colorful fruits and vegetables. I always thought this was because the nutrients in those fruits and vegetables are necessary for our health, including, for example, antioxidants. So check mark, that is true. Then some time ago, several years ago, I learned they were important not only because of the nutrients, but also because of the high fiber content, which feeds our microbiome, which then produces many beneficial molecules for our body. So a second check mark. Most recently, literally in the last few months, I learned that colorful plants are also hormetic because they make molecules that are a little bit toxic to discourage other animals from eating them. We can handle small amounts of those toxins, and they actually challenge our cells to become stronger and more resilient. So now there's 3 reasons that eating colorful plants are healthy. They contain good nutrients, they feed the microbiome, and because of the hormetic qualities, they cause our cells to become stronger and healthier. A second example of hormesis. One of the most powerful aspects of our environment is the sun, and especially for those of you who are members of my Live with Dr. Stein membership, I've been on this bandwagon now for a few months, how getting out into sunlight is beneficial for us. So nothing new here. You will have heard that exposure to sunlight is healthy, and you may even know a specific mechanism that infrared and red light from the sun directly improves our mitochondrial function by activating cytochrome C oxidase. So that's all true, check. But in addition to this, red and infrared light is a hormetic stress because when we create more energy, we also create free radicals. Those free radicals are noted by these nutrient sensing umbrella pathways that I mentioned. And that leads our cells to activate our own intrinsic antioxidant and anti-inflammatory pathways, things like NRF2. And it looks like it's going to be much more beneficial for health to stress our body enough that it can activate its own internal pathways rather than taking external antioxidant supplements that activate the NRF2 pathway. So that's just an example. So light is directly helpful, and it's also hormetically helpful. So a summary of hormesis, kind of to help put it into context, is that our modern lifestyle of comfort, right, where we don't get hungry, we don't get hot, we don't get cold, is anti-hormetic. Our modern lifestyle protects us from the variations, the daily variations in environment that our body actually needs to thrive. So the goal of hormesis is to be less comfortable. Now, that might not sound very appealing, so I just want to emphasize, but to do it in a safe, moderated, gradual way, right? Not boot camp. Just take baby steps to be a little bit hungrier, a little bit longer, a little bit hotter, a little bit colder, for example. So now I'm going to move to the quantum biology section, again, quite short, and then I'm going to share how this has impacted my own life. So quantum biology is even upstream of hormesis. Many of the benefits of quantum biology act through hormesis, but it's even more upstream. And luckily for me, who really struggled in physics, you don't have to be a physicist to be able to benefit from what I'm going to share with you. So very brief summary. For most of the past 115 years since quantum physics was conceived of, it has been assumed, because we didn't have ways to test it, that quantum properties apply only to tiny subatomic particles, things like electrons and protons and quarks, and they only manifest quantum properties when they're in very special situations, like particle accelerators at CERN in Switzerland, and that they couldn't possibly have any effect in us. We are complicated, multicellular, wet, and warm, all things that are the opposite of a particle accelerator. For at least 20 years, and actually longer, as I'm listening to more podcasts, it turns out people in the 40s were even suggesting this, but it's only been very recently that we had a way to design experiments to show that it looks true. It's being discovered that quantum properties, so just to name a few of them, particle wave duality, quantum coherence, quantum tunneling, and quantum entanglement, have been shown to affect many important aspects of function in plants and animals. Examples are on this slide. How birds navigate during migration is quantum. How our DNA replicates without making a gazillion errors is quantum. How photosynthesis works, so the basis of all life on the planet, and how every enzyme in our bodies works is based on quantum principles. If you want to read more, and I'm just in the beginning stages of really understanding the details enough to be able to explain them to you in future sessions, I would recommend the book, Life on the Edge. It's written by professors John Joe McFadden and Jim Al-Khalili. Megan will undoubtedly pull up that book and put it in the chat. It's already 20 years old. And there's already some things in that book that are outdated. So I'm reading the book now. I just read a section where they argued that microtubules, that's a little feature in cells, couldn't possibly be quantum. And they listed a whole bunch of reasons. Just last week, I don't know why it came across my radar, a paper was published in a very prominent journal with strong research evidence that microtubules are quantum, and microtubules are very integral to how we think, so how our brain works. So I would just say this is rapidly emerging, and anything I say in this webinar today may be outdated in even a few weeks' time. What I'm learning is that more and more research is accumulating, and it's likely that all of our biology is a combination of classical and quantum. So when I move my arm, like if I don't hold it up with my muscles, it's going to fall down. That's classical physics. But at the nano level, literally nano level, inside my body, it's quantum properties that are allowing me to hold my arm up. Okay, so what are some practical examples? Sorry, there we go. So most, if not all, quantum processes in life, so that's plants and animals, are driven by light from the sun, because that's the single power source of our planet. Light might look continuous. We talk about beams of light, and it looks like one big thing. But actually, light is delivered in tiny packets of energy called quanta, the plural of quantum. Every color of visible and invisible light contains a slightly different amount of energy in its little package, and it's absorbed by different molecules in the body and has different biological effects. It's really, really fascinating. So examples of these effects that are now known to be directly caused by exposure to light include increased cellular energy, activation of antioxidant pathways, and the creation of essential molecules, things like cortisol, melatonin, and even beta endorphin. I now know that's why being in the sun makes us feel good, because it activates our endogenous opiates. In addition to providing these necessary functions in the body, these quanta of light also provide critical information. They're telling us in every moment of every day what's going on outside our body. Is it day? Is it night? Is it raining? Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? Is it hot? Is it cold? And in our modern lifestyle, we sit outside of the sun, so inside our houses or residences. Most people spend 90% or more of their time inside, behind glass that blocks all of the non-visible wavelengths. It only lets in visible light. So we are totally cut off from the critical functions of light and the life-saving information. Two researchers I've been listening to a lot, Professor Emeritus Bob Fosbury and a professor and researcher, Scott Zimmerman, are giving an example or metaphor that they think we are being starved of light, just like sailors in the 1700s developed scurvy and died because they were starved of vitamin C. They think this is not too strong of an example. And they believe, and they're not alone, that the explosion of chronic illness, right, of overweight, of diabetes, of cancer, of heart disease, of dementia, is directly related to us being starved of light. There we go. Hold it. Right. So given that that looks like it is increasingly proven to be true, what can you do? So again, specific strategies that you can do to take advantage of the free energy and information that the sun provides. Get outside as close to sunrise as possible so that your eyes are open and exposed to blue light that comes over the horizon as soon as the sun rises. That tells your body that it's daytime. When the sun is about 10 or 20 degrees above the horizon, go out again, even for a few minutes, because that's when ultraviolet A light is rising, and that activates all the hormone systems I referred to, the things like cortisol and melatonin and thyroid hormone. It's even activates our production of neurotransmitters. So if you're someone who suffers from anxiety or depression, you could take antidepressants to raise your serotonin level, or you could go outside. Go outside again in midday with your skin exposed, unless it's -40, to try to get some UVB light to create vitamin D, and it does much more than this. Go out any time of the day when the sun is up. Even in the shade, you're going to absorb red and infrared light, and even through your clothing. You can sit under a tree. You do not have to be in the direct sunlight, because trees do not absorb red light, right? They're green. They absorb other wavelengths. They transmit infrared light, and it penetrates and kind of gets stronger or accumulates under trees. And then go out near sunset to get the yellow, orange, and red frequencies that tell your brain that it's time for bed. So here is how I have been influenced. Many of you know I struggled and continue to struggle in some ways with sleep, and I woke up really late and never saw a single sunrise for decades. I now have my phone, which is on airplane mode, of course, to prevent me getting overloaded with EMF, but I have my phone alarm set to 6:15 a.m., which where I am right now in Nova Scotia is before dawn. So I'm up for a little bit to do my morning routine before dawn, at which point I'm either using my red headlamp and my orange blocking glasses so that I don't premature trick my brain into thinking that it's daytime. And then as the sun is rising, I go outside without my glasses. So everything's a little bit fuzzy. And if possible and not too cold, I ground myself during that, say, 10 or 20 minutes by going in bare feet. Because I'm traveling, I have the opportunity to spend way more time outside than I ever did in the past. I spent most of my time inside because I was always working, and I'm trying to change that. What I'm still working on is my indoor light environment. So in my van, unfortunately, it was made before I learned all of this, and I have LED pot lights in my van, which of course emit only visible, mostly blue light. I'm planning to order some different kind of lights to supplement them, and I wear my orange blue blockers before dawn and after dusk. So that's what I'm personally doing. So to quickly summarize quantum biology, I just want to say that these are not treatments or interventions. This is basically strategies to create or recreate the conditions that we've always had as humans, pre-civilization, and the conditions that many scientists are arguing we need to survive. It's like giving our body vitamin D to prevent rickets, or giving our body vitamin C to prevent scurvy. So to wrap up, I hope I've been able to pass on some of my excitement and to really get across that, in my opinion, this is a major paradigm shift of what we can do to improve our health. This doesn't invalidate anything that modern medicine has to offer, and many of us, including me, have health conditions which require modern medical intervention. So I'm doing both. What I'm introducing are health strategies that are upstream of the tests, drugs, and supplements, even diet and activity, self-management strategies that we often talk about. And these strategies are freely available. I'm very excited. I hope I've got you a little bit revved up, and I look forward to sharing more with you. And there is more, right? What I shared today is the tip of the iceberg. I'm learning new material every single day, and I'm going to teach as I'm learning with people in my subscription-based membership, Live with Dr. Stein. Megan can put the link in the chat to make it easier to go there and bookmark, so you can come back later and take a look and see if it might be for you. So I'll just share very briefly what the membership involves, because again, it's my best way to meet with people directly, share what I'm learning, and then hear your questions and comments and go back and do more research and come back to you with more information. So the sessions are 75 minutes every other Thursday at this exact time of 11 a.m. Mountain. I'm going to share things like what I shared today, the latest upstream science-based information with emphasis on what you can do. So things that are accessible, that don't cost a lot of money, that don't take a lot of effort or time. And at the very least, provide you with the information you need to make informed choices. Right, emphasis is on accessible, low to no cost, because it's no point to have fancy, complicated protocols that the average person can't access. Almost always, I have a handout that's available prior to the session so that people can read it if they wish. Of course, you don't have to. There's no mandatory homework in this membership. You just get to come and listen and take in new information. And in every session, there's time for Q&A. Now, there's a couple bonuses. One is that the sessions are recorded, so you'll never miss a session. Like you might miss it, but you can go back and listen to it later. All the recordings and handouts are stored for a year. So again, you're not feeling pressured to do everything right away. We've been running the session since February. So what this means is all of the sessions that have happened so far are on the community. And if you were to join live now, you could go back and listen to any session that you wish. You also get free access to anything else that I'm doing. For the past many months, that's been the expert speaker series webinars. We're thinking about some changes to that, but nevertheless, anything extra that I'm doing, you will get free access. And you also have access to a moderated online community. Megan, who's moderating for me today, is also the community moderator. And my hope is that people will continue asking questions and answering those questions, because there's a lot of very knowledgeable people in the community in between the sessions. Now, the big question probably on many of your minds is, how much will this cost? It's $49 Canadian a month. That's equal to about maybe $33 American. So it's very, very reasonable. You get a 14-day free trial, so it's no risk to try. If you don't like it, you go to the first session, it's not for you, you can cancel with no penalty. We've just introduced an annual membership option, which gives you about a 15% discount. Now, almost certainly there's some people on the call today who are already members who are like, oh, I'm interested in this 15% discount. If you go to the community, at the top, there's some tabs, and one of them is called resources. And there's a drop down, and then under resources, it says frequently asked questions. And one of the questions is, how do I convert to an annual membership? It's a little bit tricky, but if you run into any problems, Megan will help you. Thank you, Megan. If you are on low income, and my definition of that is that you earn less than $30,000 a year, sorry, 30,000 of your currency. So if you live in Europe, that would be 30,000 euros. If you live in the US, it would be 30,000 US, etc. Or you earn a very low amount because you live in a developing country with a crazy currency situation. All you need to do is email me at espc@eleanorsteinmd.ca, send some kind of evidence that you're on a low income. We will approve you, no questions asked. You'll go on the eligible list, and we will send you a special link, and you can choose what you can afford from two choices, either $29 Canadian or $9 Canadian a month. And again, no questions asked, no judgment. We know that people generally give what they can. Also, you can subscribe or unsubscribe at any time. It's very simple. It's on the community, and there's no penalties or commitments. So what you're going to get is front row access to me. So at the risk of bragging, I have a lot of experience. Why? Because I've been ill for 35 years and I have made it my personal mission to learn as much as I can so that I can heal myself. So you're getting the benefit of my personal lived experience. I've done gazillions of tests, tried most treatments in the book. I also have the experience of having worked with thousands of patients over 25 years when this was the sole focus of my medical practice. And I've read thousands and thousands of research papers and continue to do so on an almost daily basis. Also, even though I have strong opinions, many of you know that, I strive to remain open-minded and I'm learning every single day. So if you ask a question today and I don't know the answer, chances are I'm going to come back to you within a few months, having read more, and I'll be able to share some information with you. Now, we've been doing surveys in live since the beginning, and most sessions, they get a 4.9 or a 5.0 out of 5 rating. So it seems to be hitting the mark. People are giving us very positive feedback. And these are some of the comments. People are liking that they have access to a source of information they can trust instead of randomly wandering around the internet, not really knowing what is a legitimate recommendation. They like the evidence base. They like the encouragement to try and explore more things. They like the delivery, that it's presented in a user-friendly way. And they know that I'm going to stay up to date and keep you informed. And they're finding the information is good value, for which I'm thankful. My last couple slides here are what's coming up. So a lot of people, when I first introduced live, they were like nervous. Well, what if you're going to do topics that I'm not interested in? So the topics, an updated list on future topics is on the registration page. So at any time you can look and see what's coming up over, say, the next 2 to 3 months. And in the community, for people who are already members, we keep an updated list there as well, so you can always check ahead. So here are some of the topics coming up in October, November, December of 2024. We're going to be hearing about hydrogen water, and most of these are from experts. Red and infrared light, the digging deeper into how they actually work and how to implement them. Peptides and how to use them. How to increase vagus nerve function, mast cell activation syndrome, and for 2025, these are some of the topics I have in progress. How to use all the frequencies of the sun throughout the day to improve health, because they all have slightly different functions. How to increase your body voltage. So that's something, so quantum biology is about more than sunlight. There's maybe 4 or 5 main aspects to it. And another one is body voltage. Diet, of course, still has central place. How to decrease your body level of deuterium. That's a heavy hydrogen that has very significant implications when we look at health from a quantum perspective. And so much more. Things like how to create a healthy indoor light environment, seasonal living. So how to vary what you do in the summer and the winter, for example. Exclusion zone water. So water is another very key facet of quantum biology. How to optimize hormones and more. I'm going to now open it for questions. I'm going to stop sharing. How long did I talk for? Okay, I did pretty well. I stuck pretty close to my 40 minutes because I did not have a timer in front of me. And I am going to, oh my goodness, look at all the comments in the chat. Okay. So thank you, Megan, for putting life on the edge. It's pretty accessible. You know, for quantum physicists, these guys did a pretty good job of explaining it in terms I, who is not a physicist, can understand. So I would also ask Some of the people who are on the call today are already members of Live, and you would be welcome to share your experience, positive or negative, to let people who are maybe considering it know what you get out of it, maybe what you'd like to see me improve. So Julie is saying, amazing observation. I'd like to ask a question. I live on the wrong side of a mountain. Right. So these are realities, right? We don't all live in an equatorial sunny country. I never see the sunrise. Yes. So you'll see the dawn. The sun itself will be behind the mountain, but you'll know that it's light. And I would say as soon as the sun peaks over the mountain, that would be the ideal time to get outside. Would it be enough to look at the sunrise when it is 10 degrees? I believe so. I think there's no perfect world. I've been traveling, I've been around a lot of mountains. I've noticed that same thing. And I just try to be there when the actual sun comes over the mountain. If we have evolved or adapted over all these millions of years, then theoretically doing all these things, sorry, a word is just blocked here, is devolving. Sorry, let me try to move there's a thing next to it. So there's a little tiny word I can't read. So theoretically doing all these things, I assume you're saying like our modern lifestyle things are devolving. And that's exactly what people are saying. They're saying our generation, possibly what is putting us over the edge right now is the universality of ultra-processed food, glyphosate. So, there's many things I didn't have time to mention in this. Eating a high-carb diet, which increases deuterium. The legislation in most countries that only LED lights are allowed to be sold in stores. So we've lost even the amount of red and infrared that was in incandescent lights. So in the last 20 years, for the first time in like the last 100 years, the lifespan is starting to go down because we have so many serious chronic diseases happening. And that's what people are saying, even that our brains are devolving because we're not getting enough omega-3 fatty acids. So it's kind of scary, but the good news is that if you have information, you can do something about it, right? Just because everybody else is eating Twinkies doesn't mean you have to. And just because everybody else is staying inside doesn't mean you have to. These are things that are not that expensive or difficult to even make some small changes. So another question, what are your thoughts about using indoor light sources in the winter like sad lights, red light? Yes. So there is a company called, is it Nira, Megan? N-I-R-A? Yes. And you're going to thumbs up. So Megan's going to put it in the chat. There is a new light bulb that has just come out, which I am planning to order and have sent to my uncle's house, who I'm going to be visiting in about a month, so that I can pick them up and run them off the inverter in my van. It's a combination of a classical LED light, but with as broad spectrum as possible in the visible range, and what's the name? A tungsten filament. Again, I'm not a physicist, which emits a broad spectrum, including red and infrared. So they've created this light bulb that meets all the criteria of all of these agencies that are limiting our access to light. And they're adding the tungsten filament to add back the red and the infrared. So that's what I'm hoping. My van is very tiny, and probably literally one of these bulbs will do the trick for me. They sell a bunch of light fixtures, but of course, for my situation, that won't work. So sad lights are okay. Seasonal affective disorder lights are about 10,000 lux, and they're mostly bright white light. They probably don't have much red or infrared. For people who have depression, they are extremely helpful. The evidence base is super strong. And again, I wouldn't stop doing anything that you're already doing, but they will not give you the exposure you need throughout the day to red and infrared and to UV light, UVA and UVB. Someone says your enthusiasm and optimism are contagious. Thank you. That was my goal for today. So I'll take that as mission accomplished. Because you know what? Even when I'm not teaching, even when I'm talking to my friends, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't believe what I just heard and learned today. Because of course, I want them to be healthy too, right? So I'm on a little bit of a missionary zeal. I'm in a bit of a missionary zeal time of my life. So just bear with me. How do you recommend viewing sunrise at northern latitudes? So this is what I'm trying to figure out right now. So here's what I've learned so far. In the summer, it's just not possible, right? Because I grew up in Edmonton. The sun gets up at like 3:30 and it doesn't set until 11 or 11:30. That's not enough hours to sleep. So you just have to do the best you can. You sleep your however many hours that you need. And as soon as you get up, as soon as possible, you get outside and you expose your eyes to the light. And so that's in the summer. The problem there is trying to block the light, right? Not be light all the time. Otherwise, your body thinks it's daytime. In the winter, which is what we in the Northern Hemisphere are going into right now, the problem is the opposite. So now my 6:15, that 2 months ago, the sun was already up for an hour. Now the sun is not going to be up for an hour. It's rising here at about 7:15. So I'm turning on red light in my van. Of course, I always travel with some red light. So I have a red light headlamp. I just put that on in the morning as I'm doing my morning routine. And like I said, as soon as dawn happens and it's light out, I turn off that light and I just use that natural light. If it's warm enough, I open the door so that I'm getting some natural light bouncing through into my van. And then as soon as actual sunrise, the sun comes over the horizon, if possible, and of course it's not every day, nothing is perfect, I get outside at that time. I have a 10,000 lux. Yes, so I think that answers the question. You know what? Sleep is more important than being up at sunrise if sunrise is at 3 a.m. Sleep trumps that. Can I get more information on the glasses you wear? So yes, I wear a brand called UVEX. I think that's a takeoff of like X, get out, UV light. UVEX, they're made by Honeywell. Someone who's in the field, of course, I don't have light measurement devices myself, but someone, and they're the cheapest glasses on the market. They're like, should be no more than $20, including shipping. There's much more expensive ones available. And just because you pay more doesn't mean that they actually block the blue light, right? The goal of these glasses is to wear them before dawn and after dusk, not during the day necessarily, to block blue light so that your body gets the message it's nighttime. And apparently these Honeywell glasses, UVEX, are pretty good enough, right? It's a big step ahead of doing nothing. Now, some people also wear yellow tinted glasses. Megan is one of these when they're working on devices. And Megan, I don't know, you're welcome to put the brand of the glasses you use in the chat as well, because I've actually never asked you that question. So some people who are a bit more sensitive wear yellow glasses when they're working on devices during the day, and they switch to the orange glasses when the sun is down. How long do I stay outside without my glasses at sunrise? So that totally depends on the temperature, the wind, and the rain. So if it is pouring rain, guess what? I'm not perfect. I don't go outside of my van. I maybe notice which side the rain is coming from, and I open the window on the other side of the van and sit next to it. If it's a nice enough day like today, I stay out for about 20 minutes at sunrise. Are there other habits or routine? So mostly I mentioned the new routines in that slide towards the end that I'm doing. So it's getting outside. A new one that I thought grounding was pretty woo-woo. I have the book, I have the grounding pads, my house is grounded. Like I've done all the stuff, but I honestly didn't understand it well enough to really believe in it. But now that I've listened to numerous experts, professors, very credible people talking about the mechanism, I'm really getting that it's important. And so I'm going to be having expert speakers in the new year talking about grounding to give a lot more information. Apparently, the best grounding is to be naked in salt water. So, of course, that's not possible for 99% of us. So this summer, I've been around a lot of lakes. I've taken my shoes and socks off, put shorts on, and gone into the water. And now that it's getting a bit colder, I'm just walking on the ground without my shoes and socks. But it's also starting to even get a bit cold for that. It takes a while for my feet to warm up. And the bonus is the grass is wet in the morning usually, and that's better because the water allows more electrons to flow into our body. Isn't there a pacing session next week? Yes, there is. So for those of you who are on live, yes, our topic next week is using wearable trackers. Right. I guess I didn't put that in the list of topics, my mistake. Yes, appreciate the indoor light environment topic coming up. So I won't spill the beans who that speaker is, but they're a very excellent and prominent speaker who I'm hoping will say yes. Right. So Megan put the website for Nira lighting. So these lights are pretty expensive. Of course, they're $29 US for a bulb. I'm going to buy 2 bulbs and 2 sockets and hoping they last for a really long time. AI is changing all of this a whole bunch, and healthcare data for all of this is becoming easier to access. Do you think the COVID vaccines cause blood clots? So funnily enough, oh, that was a direct message. I'm sorry. So I won't say who asked it. But funnily enough, I'm on a COVID conference today, and they talked about vaccines. I'll maybe try to look up the paper. I didn't have time to get it, but there's it was in the New York Times apparently, kind of a graphic showing the number of people that get blood clots from COVID. So it's one of the main side effects of COVID, and the other side effects versus the number of people that get side effects from the vaccine. And of course, there are some, and the most concerning one is myocarditis in young men, right? It's rare. It's 1 in 12,000 people, but it exists. And if you're the one who gets it, you're not a very happy camper. So apparently it shows kind of in some graphic form, here's how many people get serious side effects from the COVID virus versus here's the number of people that get side effects from the vaccine, and the number from the virus is way higher. Of course, this is a conference of the believers, so you have to take that and filter it through your own belief systems. I am new to Live with Dr. Stein, but so far I'm loving it and know that what I get out of it is up to me. That's a great point to the person who made that comment, because what I'm sharing in live is information and strategy suggestions, but of course they won't work if you don't try any of them. So I think maybe my own personal stubbornness and determination, even when my hope is low, I just didn't give up. I just thought, well, what I'm doing is not working. I feel crappy. And so I just kept trying stuff. And eventually, it took me a long time, 27 years, but I had this, significant improvement in my health. One of my big motivations for doing live sessions is to try to make it quicker for you, right? I hope that I can share some of the most useful strategies so that you're not like trial and erroring for years and years, and that you can find stuff that will help you sooner. I just went to a new acupuncturist, and he actually said from personal experience of FM, the same thing as Dr. Stein. It will take time, never give up, and there's also always hope. Awesome. Question, what is the optimal time period? Great question. To make hormetic stress work. This person does hydrogen peroxide baths twice weekly, and it takes about 3 days to get the effect. Unless I do too high of a concentration. So I would say The challenge with hormesis is you might not discern, like these are acting at the molecular level, right? They're activating these insulin sensors and AMPK. And of course, I have no idea just by noticing my body if my AMPK is upregulated or downregulated or my mTOR is on or off. So what I would say is the immediate effects of hormetic stress, some of them start acting within seconds because the sensors are picking up the changes right away. And those changes in the nutrient sensing pathways probably continue for several days. And then in the absence of more stress or reminders, they kind of forget, just like us, right? If we're not constantly reminded of what we can do differently, we tend to go back to our old habits. It's the same thing with the nutrient sensing pathways. But how long does it take to maybe have noticeable results? Like, oh, I actually have more energy, which implies that I made lots of new healthy mitochondria. This is an opinion, not a science-based answer. I would say we're probably talking months. We're probably talking 1 to 3 months of consistently doing a hormetic stress to notice some kind of general improvement in health. I would be very open to other people's opinions on that. If you have had a different experience and you want to put that in the chat, that would be fantastic. So some stuff probably hasn't totally been measured. Like most of the research on hormesis is at the cellular level and at the lab test level. Like if you do cold exposure, your insulin tolerance improves. But did anybody ask the participants if they feel better? No, modern medicine isn't big on personal opinion. So I actually haven't read any papers on subjective opinion, more so just on lab markers. Someone saying, I've participated in every Dr. Stein course. That is true. They're thoroughly prepared and she's always adding new science and knowledge to improve patients' lives. Thank you for that. Mine are, so Megan says, oh, okay, hers are a prescription glasses, a T something tint. I'd have to look it up. Got it. And now I think she's put something in the chat with more about her glasses. Yes, so me, myself, my eyesight is quite poor and I really can't read or function up close without my prescription glasses. So yes, my orange glasses fit over my glasses, which doesn't make them that attractive, right? I tend to wear them more so inside my van. Oh, I see. And Megan's are clip-ons. Great. So yes, there are more and more clip-ons available that are much more attractive than the ones I wear. Someone's saying, thank you very much. This webinar was very interesting. Glad you're sharing your knowledge. Do you think there is something upstream of mitochondrial dysfunction? Yes, absolutely. The natural environment, that's the perfect question to be asking because that's my belief, right? So for the past year, I've been teaching about hormesis. And now that I'm learning about quantum biology, that's what's upstream of hormesis. The things in our environment, like light and water and magnetism, I haven't even gotten into that because I barely understand it, but the Earth's magnetic field, all of these things are upstream of hormesis. They are what triggers and allows hormesis to work. Like if we don't have exposure to light and our mitochondria are in hibernation mode, then hormesis won't work because there's not enough energy for all of those processes to work. So I would say light, water, and magnetism are upstream of everything. We're almost at the end here. I'm doing sauna and chill baths. I feel good after the chill bath, but for a short time. How long should the cold bath be? That is a great question. So with hormesis, the typical answer is until you're uncomfortable. So for a cold exposure, to go full bore, and not everyone who's severely ill is recommended to go full bore, right? You might need to build up to it in tiny steps. So cold exposure, you know you've been in long enough when you start shivering, right? That's your body telling you, I got the message. I need to make more mitochondria so that I'm better prepared next time this happens. But not everyone who's severely ill is going to tolerate staying in cold until they shiver. So you may go 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. For me, shivering takes a while, like 10 to 15 minutes. And I would say not everyone is ready for that. You need to work up to it. Same with sauna or heat stress. It's when you start sweating. That's your body's way of communicating with you. It got the message, and it's going to put all of these resiliency pathways into action. I'm not going to talk about oxaloacetate because it's way downstream, right? So anything that's biochemical, like LDN, oxaloacetate, antioxidant supplements, all of those things are way downstream, and they may have good effectiveness and work well for some people. And what I'm advocating is that if you found something that works for you, that you keep doing it, and then you add these hormetic and quantum biology strategies to what you're already doing. Now, at some point, like I have significantly decreased, Megan knows because she's about to send me a care package, I've significantly decreased the number of drugs and supplements that I take. Maybe it's due to what I'm doing. Maybe I'm just continuing to improve. It's right. It's hard to prove. But as the quantum biology and hormetic pathways kick in, you may find that you don't need as many biochemical fixes. Another person saying, I've taken all of Dr. Stein's courses and I've been a member from the beginning. I tend to be a chronic researcher. I'll take that as a good thing, a chronic researcher. How about an awesome researcher? And I'm still learning new ways to do things without having to do the work. So that's really my goal here, right? Is to save you, because you have to be familiar with the medical literature. My 40 years of experience gives me a strong spidey sense of which paths to learn more about and which maybe to leave and research later if more evidence comes out. So I really hope that the people who join my membership, I'm saving you time, right? That you don't have to do all the research yourself. I'm kind of vetting and curating, and in all of my handouts, I have a couple references so that the keen researchers can also see for themselves where I'm getting the information from. So this person's saying this gives her more time to actually implement the strategies, and I'm starting to see improvements in my health, and my quality of life has improved immensely. So awesome, that's my goal. Thoughts on fasting and autophagy? Absolutely. So these are hormetic stressors. Fasting activates these nutrient sensing pathways, which activate autophagy, which is the eating up of cells and proteins and molecules that are damaged and creating new ones. So absolutely, I'm a big fan. And I think we're at the very end. So if there's no other questions, I really want to thank you for your attention. If you want to learn more about Live, Megan just posted the link there. And if after looking at that page, you've got specific questions for your situation, just fire us an email, and either Megan or I or Michelle, who's also helping me on the admin side, will respond to you. We're all very familiar. Thank you very much. We'll leave it there, Megan, for the recording.